Success is measured in the achievement of specific goals. On the premise that a dream becomes a goal when you write it down, Wallaby coach Rod Macqueen mapped out a 2-year journey. It ended on November 6, 1999. Macqueen's Wallabies arrived at the promised land in Wales, a stadium overflowing with passion, an opponent overcome by expectation, and an Australian rugby team overwhelmed by self-belief. Macqueen's original dream was etched into sporting folklore.
Up you go, Bill.
2 years on, new dreams meant new goals.
The Wallabies have the Bledisloe Cup in dramatic circumstances.
And to complete this latest journey, a crowning glory. Macqueen's Wallabies raised the bar to dizzy heights. 7 Sport salutes a rugby dynasty. Welcome, and I know you'll enjoy this special tribute to the Wallabies' golden era under their just retired coach Rod Macqueen. In the space of 4 years, Macqueen took Australian rugby from the depths of despair to the absolute pinnacle of the sport. Following a devastating 61-22 loss to the Springboks in 1997, Rod assumed the coaching reins and his players relaunched themselves to finally claim the mantle of undisputed champions of the world. And then 18 months later, another summit conquest, the last trophy available to the Aussie team, the Tom Richards Cup, the glittering symbol of supremacy between the Wallabies and the Lions. Rod Macqueen, welcome, and thank you for this wonderful trophy cabinet.
It's a pleasure being here.
Tell me, for the first time in 45 test matches, you won't be delivering that final team talk. Has that sunk in yet?
Actually, I'm very relaxed about it. I'm really looking forward to being in my own lounge room with all the pressures of the lounge room around me, probably scotch in hand.
Now, that series against the Lions generated unprecedented support, not only here in Australia, but right around the world. What do you put it down to?
I think we probably, for the first time, saw a little bit of what we see over in the Northern Hemisphere, some of the Cardiff Arms Park and Twickenham side of things. The supporters were just unbelievable, I felt, and you know, certainly they were very vocal, and from the field point of view, the players really felt like they weren't really in Australia at times. It was magic. It was some of the best sort of moments I can remember, seeing the toing and froing between the Australian crowds and obviously the Lions supporters.
Well, the Wallaby supporters got their act together for Stadium Australia in the third test.
Yeah, they did. It was great to see actually the transition as we went on, and to see all the supporters turning out in gold, and probably Australian rugby had a bit to do with where the seating sort of eventuated as well. Was
there one aspect, one moment that got Australia home in this critical series in that third test?
I think probably just the self-belief that's within the side. In fact, that's the word we went out with, believe in ourselves, and it's a team that does do that. At the end of the day, we did a lot of work, obviously, on the Lions, and we were reasonably confident going into that game, however, knowing just how hard it was going to be.
OK, well, let's join the third test action at Stadium Australia. A sellout crowd with the series locked at 1-1.
Here's Wilkinson and Henderson. 5 metres out. Wallabies lying all over it, slowing it down. Here's Dawson and Wilkinson. There's 3 on 2 here. Overlap, it has to be a try. Robinson! They've got him into space a couple of times, and a telling strike back by the Lions. Inside ball for Finnegan. Kefu with a big step off his left foot. O'Driscoll and Tom Smith. Australia surging now. Great work by Gregan. Here's Walker. Roth and Herbert. Splendid try by the Australians down the short side.
Such smart play here from the Wallaby backs. They saw Keith Wood, Joe Roth, perfectly timed pass, 5 phases.
And those tacklers are held in there cleverly. Here's Henderson straight through. Robinson! Henderson held on. Robinson pulling his hair out. Owen Finnegan at the front. Now can the Wallabies get their driving more going? That's Foley in control at the back. Lions mustn't pull it down. But the Wallabies don't do it as well as the Lions. Johnson will try and hold him up and turn him. Nick Stiles trying to get it back. Well, put that down to the defence of Martin Johnson. Harrison's the money man. Gregan. Gray tries to smash through. Gregan again. Kefu. That's the goal line. Gregan wants it quickly. Here it is. It's a try number 2 for Daniel Herbert. Well, just these little mistakes have opened the window for the opposite team. Look at the overlap here. O'Driscoll. That is a very ugly tackle by Daniel Herbert. And I think he might be spending some time in the sin bin. They're still going.
You have to drive this maul sideways. You can't stop it.
They're trying to pull it sideways now, but Neil Back had it. Now they clear it. They've sucked in the defenders. Who's out wide? Wilkinson goes himself. There were 4 Lions players on 2. And has Australia forced a turnover?
Turned it over.
Courageous stuff. Andrew Walker, again, wanting to clear that ball 40 metres down the field. It comes off the side of his boot. They're still alive, but they have to do it with a converted try to snatch the series now. Here's O'Driscoll. He's dangerous. Here's Eales. And Smith. Well, he beat several tackles there, and Australia stretched out wide. There's an overlap. Here's Henderson. Taken there by Elton Flatley. The Wallaby defence regroups. They punch away on the short side. Wilkinson, Foley, overlap. The try's on for James. Gregan arrives. The hoot is gone. It's general play. And this is it for Australia. The Lions roared loudly, but the Wallabies soared higher.
Yes, incredible scenes at Stadium Australia. Australia beating the Lions for the first time in history. Rod, your feelings after the game?
Oh, it's pretty emotional, obviously. I think one of the things that, right at the end there, I was watching what was going on, and it wasn't until the referee had actually blown his whistle, well, I was really happy and relieved we'd won it.
I think at one point, Michael Foley offered the trophy to you, but you refused to take it and hold it up. What was that all about?
I was probably shaking too much. No, it was a wonderfully emotional experience for me going around there. I think, you know, knowing that it was all over and just seeing the fruits of the labour from all the players.
How difficult was the task of beating the Lions, the best from the Northern Hemisphere, given the limited preparation time?
It's quite a different challenge to what we'd had in the past. We've always had our goals as we went through, but we'd always had a lot of time to make sure we were really prepared for those goals. For instance, the World Cup, we had 2 years that we were working just to that one goal. The Tri-Nations was 4 tests. We worked away for that, but this was virtually right on the edge of Super 12, and we had to handle it really differently because of that.
OK, you also had amputee John Coutis address the team at the captain's practice on Friday. What impact?
Yeah, it's quite amazing. I mean, that's one of the things that the players introduced, where the players can bring anyone in, and we've had Herb Elliott, for instance, in the past. I think it was George Gregan invited John Coutis, and he talked about, you know, he'd had obviously hard times. He's a man who had both his legs taken off at an early age. And he talked about self-belief, and just that was what he went through with life. He was a man who was able to overcome anything with his own self-belief. And I think we took that, and that was the catch cry for the team, and that was believe in ourselves. And you know, that's something obviously this team has done over the last couple of years.
People don't like the boorish behaviour that's often identified with sports teams. They don't like people having secured success, rubbing it in someone else's face when they've just beaten them. And that's never happened with this team. I can't think of any circumstance involving this Australian side, when Rod Macqueen's in charge, when there has been any behavioural blemish. And I think deep down, without translating that notion, I think that's basically what Australians feel is good about this side, that they're rather proud of the green and gold and what they do in the world of rugby.
I was captain that day, and unfortunately, you know, you always hope that you're going to get a great result and have a win, but it was probably one of the worst defeats that an Australian side has ever suffered. So for me personally, it was quite hard to bounce back from, and But, you know, I did and the team did, and, you know, we went on to bigger and better things.
Argentina played very well in that particular game. We'd beaten them the week before. They played very well, they turned it around. But it was at that point that Rod pretty much decided that we had to change a lot of things about the team, the standards on and off the field. And as a team, as a unit, we certainly started to build from that performance.
That first tour taught us quite a bit. It was a difficult period. Things didn't work out. We found that there were some problems with team culture. There were obviously some problems integrating a Brumby style of play into the Wallabies. And it was really the tour, I think, that set the tone and the whole plan for our victory in the World Cup and the success that the Wallabies have had.
You've joined us for Macqueen's Wallabies, a 7-sport special, saluting the momentous achievements of Rod Macqueen's all-conquering Wallabies. Rod, you took over in difficult circumstances after that record loss to South Africa, a tour of Argentina, England and Scotland. Was that a watershed in hindsight?
Oh, absolutely. It was terrific for us. It's terrible to have a couple of losses, but it allowed us to really see where we were. And I think John Eales had it right there when he talked about the type of standards. We had to change the way we thought. And I suppose change was the order of the day, and that gave us a bit of time coming into the next season to do those sort of things.
And some of these key personnel you brought into the Wallaby management?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously Jeff Miller, who we saw there, he's been an integral part of everything, and the business side of things, which he was very good at, he brought that into the Wallabies. Obviously Steve Nance was someone we got out of rugby league, and we got him for a reason, because the game had become a lot more aerobic based, and the league were a much more aerobic based type team. So we changed a lot of the fitness. That happened very early, and obviously John Muggleton, who brought a new level of thinking about defence. So all of those things needed to be done. The game had changed fairly dramatically, very quickly, and they're the sort of the things and personnel we put in place because of that.
OK, well, your first Test match, Rod, as Wallaby coach at home was against an understrength England at Suncorp Stadium. It was a dream start. Now here, the revolutionary move of Stephen Larkham from a dashing fullback to fly half. Why?
Well, it was obviously a very important, it has been a very important position for rugby union, but it had become exceedingly more so. So we looked for someone who had the type of skills we thought would work right for us as far as the 5'8" was concerned. We picked the type of skills we needed. We looked at what players we thought could fill that bill, and Steve Larkham to us seemed to be the person that could fill most of those criteria. And as it turned out, from day one, the rest of the team had a tremendous amount of confidence in him. I think that was one of the things that really was noticeable to me. For instance, Timmy Horan totally backed him from day one when he was there, and he really just went from strength to strength.
Almost the perfect game as far as the Wallabies are concerned.
It was a great start. There's no doubt that England were under strength, and they were really concentrating at that time on the centenary test, and they wanted to make sure they had their players ready for that. But from our point of view, it was terrific because it gave us a good run. It gave us a time to try some of the moves and so on we've been working on, and particularly the interaction in this game between forwards and back was exceptionally good.
Well, Rod, the Wallabies came through a rigorous 2-test series against Scotland without being fully extended, which took you to the MCG and the All Blacks. And at that point, the biggest match of your coaching career.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it was never sort of seen as the big match. That was going to be probably a good litmus test of how far we'd got. But our goal at that stage was only the World Cup. So we weren't sort of even looking at short-term goals. We really were just concentrating on making sure that we got our standards up. Our standards of play had to be really good. And I suppose it was nice at that point to see that we'd actually lifted our standard quite a bit.
And you flew in from Camp Caloundra. That was revolutionary.
Yeah, that was. And that was something we really, again, looked at. I think one of the things we tried to do is think a little bit laterally about what we were doing. And in the past, we'd stayed at 5-star accommodation and sort of taken buses to the training sessions. And we really needed to think differently because of the amount of time that we were spending in camp, etc. So this allowed the partners to be involved. It allowed the players, I suppose, to have more quality time away from the rugby. But when we really were concentrating on the rugby, it gave us a great sort of focus for our job.
And you discovered some great new Wallaby cooks as well. Let's join the 75,000 fans. Australia at full strength, but New Zealand starting Jonah Lomu on the bench.
Now they're making meters. Here's a chance.
Your memories of this match, Rod?
Yeah, I think it was one where we saw interaction again between forwards and backs. We've been working on it quite a long time, and again the team had a lot of self-belief. Although we were behind for a lot of the match, always felt confident that we'd be able to do it, and that was sort of one of the, I suppose, the stepping stones we took as a team, where we got this ability to be able to come from behind.
It was tough for John Hart, the All Black coach, because he was under fire from his home media and public.
Yeah, well, John has actually turned out to be a personal friend of mine over the years, and he was probably the coach I most admired coming into that area. So it's difficult when you've got, one coach wins, one coach loses every time, and it's a very hard time, I suppose, after the game for that. But I would like to think that it was more the fact that our team was getting it together than the All Blacks were folding. I mean, we were definitely playing at a higher level than what we had before, and we were getting better.
A disappointing match at the MCG the previous year when Greg Smith was coach, but this gave the Melbourne Aussie rules fans something to savour.
Yeah, it was very interesting after the game to see all the Melbourneites in the street singing the anthem and talking about the Wallabies. It was quite amazing to see a town that had always been an AFL town virtually change over to rugby union for that period of time, and that hasn't changed really.
So Matthew Burke, 24, the All Blacks 16. Where does that win rate in your coaching career?
I think it was an important stepping stone. That's really where I'd put it. And it was certainly a good performance from the team, but it was part of the building process that we needed to do to be successful in the World Cup.
Jonah Lomu starting on the bench. How did the team evaluate that situation? Were you relieved or were you disappointed?
We hadn't really talked about it too much. Again, that's something that was good about this team. Those type of things didn't mean a lot. We talked about it, obviously, to some extent, but only in the understanding of what we'd do if he came on, how we'd have to change our defence, etc. So it wasn't a big issue to us, really.
OK, well, there's an old saying in life that you're only as good as your last performance. However, some victories are savoured more than others.
We hadn't won a series in New Zealand, I think, since '86. We hadn't won in Christchurch for about 30 years. We'd beaten the All Blacks a couple of weeks before at the MCG, which I thought was a turning point in the team's building stage. The first time we've beaten the All Blacks in a number of years, and then to do it again a few weeks later just showed that we were consistent and we were starting to become a good team.
One memory was a try that went for 18 phases, and it was something that we had worked on for so long, and for it to come to fruition, I just remember just feeling ecstatic after that match.
I've never seen a warm-up like that before. Our team was, the guys were just, they're always ready to play, but there was something special. It was very intense, it was very focused, it was very aggressive, and we could have beaten anyone that day, I think.
I think the funniest thing for me is seeing Rod get confused sometimes with names and people. For example, Dave Wilson, I think he called him Jeff Wilson for, I think, at least up until the World Cup final, and then he might have got his name right. But the funny one for me is he always confuses the Islanders. I'll never forget one time after a New Zealand game at a function, Jolie Vadiri came up to Rod, and I think he referred to him as Kef, and it was just that sort of thing, and that sort of Rod's mind that's all over the place at times was quite amusing. Everyone had a little bit of a chuckle.
Yes, well, we're back with Macqueen's Wallabies, featuring the 4 memorable years for Australian rugby under a sometimes forgetful coach, Rod Macqueen. They've given you a stitch up there.
Muddled thought patterns it was. Everyone's allowed a little slip now and again, but they always remind you of what I've got to say.
Well, Rod, the first ever Test match in Perth, opponent South Africa. They'd beaten everyone under Nick Mallett, but it was hardly a home game for you. A new dimension in that sense.
Yeah, it's something we really had to get used to, because what we're looking to do is to take rugby nationally. And a lot of people were saying, you're having an away game, and it was very important to get that mentality out of our thought, to make sure that we realised we were playing in Australia, and it was very important for us to take rugby to other parts of the country. So we sort of we tried to avoid that sort of feeling, and we'd really need to get used to it.
And it seems as though the Perth people really got behind the Wallabies and the South Africans. Incredible turnouts at the training sessions.
Yeah, there were. I think it's for one stage there's a couple of thousand people there just mobbing us, and no matter where we went in the world, we didn't ever get that sort of people to training. So it was quite amazing.
Well, Rod, a crowd of 38,000 at Subiaco and a Springbok team brimming with confidence.
Kefu gets it away to Gregan.
Yeah, well, it was a great lesson for us that day. We always talk about learning things from our losses, but definitely we learned a lot as a team from that particular loss. We got away early from them, and then they came back, and we became very negative, and we started to just get into our defensive positions straight away.
This was the try where we were caught napping. Houston under Westhuizen taking a quick tap, and there was a bit of controversy over that one.
Yeah, there was. You know, I think again we could have made excuses there to say that the referee, there was 2 balls on the field at the time, but you know, again, you know, if I look back, it was a loss we needed to have because we had got very defensive, and we referred to that game a lot of times when we sort of were going into a game to make sure that we didn't get defensive and we'd stay positive.
Well, interesting too, Matthew Burke, who'd won so many test matches for the Wallabies, had an off night with his goal kicking.
Yeah, that always happens from time to time. You can't rely on goal kicking all the time, but you know, I don't think it certainly wasn't Burke's fault that day. It's just as a team, we really just became very negative.
It's going to be close.
Well, Ross, it seems that the Wallaby team could always find an extra gear in attack and defence when you had to. Was this something that was just innate in the side?
I think it's something that we learnt as we went along. I mean, the team, as it went along, became better and better, and hopefully it did that because we learnt as we went, and we learnt from our losses. We learnt from some of our wins as well.
Okay. Well, despite that 14-13 loss, it was a time to regroup because you had the Kiwis in Christchurch. What slant did you take for that game?
I think obviously to improve on where we were, we'd had a good game, we'd then had a loss. To go in there and just make sure we concentrated on our game. We'd been working very hard on our retention drills, forwards and backs, and we really wanted to see if we could put it to the test.
Well, under Rod Macqueen, the Wallabies demonstrated this great ability to rebound from a setback. Next, the All Blacks at Lancaster Park, and a chance to reclaim Lord Bledisloh's famous old trophy.
Still, the Wallabies have it. They work it short side. Jason Little picked up by Bowman. Tom Bowman! What a try! Anton Oliver there causing the turnover.
How many times we see this ploy by the All Blacks?
New Zealand go wide now. Meyer-Hoffler. Here goes Wilson. He beat Horan. Burke comes in. Cullen. Gregan's the only man to stop him. Wilson lost it. A knock on. Well, there's the Wallaby coaching management from the left, Rod Macqueen, Tim Lane, and here the manager on the right, John Mackay. Kefu's out in midfield. So is Matthew Burke, the first receiver. Burke trying to crash through. He goes to ground. Ian Jones, the tackler. Australia have it again. They must have won a dozen rucks in a row here. Australia go ahead, 3 metres to go. New Zealand just absorbing this enormous pressure. Larkham, try, Matthew Burke. Here goes Larkham. Herbert, look at this for Little. Jason Little, under the posts. 15 metres out. Joe Roth, dangerous, he's still going. 7 metres to go. The Wallabies can score their 4th here. Overlap, it has to be for Horan. There it is, Larkham. Stephen Larkham has sealed it. Little now. Clever pass there to Meyer-Hoffler, but look at the gold jerseys. Now there's a gap out wide. Cullen, Christian Cullen, scrambles over the goal line. Wallaby defence is grand. 4 metres to go, no sign of it coming out. Bowman was offside. Referee plays advantage. Lomu! Unstoppable! That is it. The Wallabies have done it here at Lancaster Park.
Yes, well, 27-23 was a flattering scoreboard for the All Blacks because the Wallabies had led by 27-9 with 10 minutes to go. But in terms of your goal setting as Wallaby coach, where did that rate? I mean, was that a bonus to get that win?
Yeah, definitely. I think it really showed some of the skills that we'd been working on, and it started to come to the fore on the field. We talked about how important that had been. We're obviously a bit disappointed about letting them back in the game, and that was something, again, we learnt from. But it was definitely, it was a point, I suppose, that we turned from being in the beginning series through to when we called it our journey, and the journey sort of started from then going into the World Cup.
So it was a 2-year journey then, and picking up games like that really was a very special additive, I suppose.
Yeah, we talked a lot of the time after the game about where we'd gone wrong, the parts we didn't like, so we tended to try not to talk too much about the result and what it meant. I mean, that was important. It was important to enjoy the moment, but we also wanted to make sure we put it in context to understand we had to improve all the time.
Well, Rod, it was a memorable aftermath. I think every Australian supporter in Christchurch had a drink from the Bledisloe Cup that night.
Yeah, no, it was terrific, and passing the cup round in the hotel foyer, I've got very many fond memories of that, and I think myself and Elsie might have started off some Christmas carols at 12 o'clock, which sort of was the order of the night at that stage.
I saw Phil Kearns having a very animated conversation with a pillar in the hotel at about 4 a.m. in the morning too. I don't think there was much sleep that night, was there?
No, it was a great celebration, and it was great to do it with the players involved, with a lot of the spectators. It's probably something that doesn't happen a lot in other sports, but I thought it was very special from the point of view of the interaction within rugby.
Well, Alan Jones touched on it, this ability of the Wallabies to look beyond themselves, to mix with the players and maybe those less fortunate than themselves.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's been very good from my point of view is the way the players have conducted themselves, particularly around the public, in hotels, etc., and the fact that they're always willing to give youngsters signatures, etc. And we've had some wonderful letters over the years just about that, just that.
Okay, well, 2 out of 2 against the All Blacks. Could the Wallabies achieve an historic clean sweep against their Tasman rivals in Sydney?
It is a team effort, and the team is not the playing team. It's more than that. It's the reserves and the extended playing squad and the team management. And I think that with everyone doing their job, it's all those people putting in their effort and contributing, and that makes the whole team effort. And I don't think you can function. We can't function at the level we're used to functioning at without everyone contributing.
The good thing about this team is that it's not a team of individuals, and whether it's players or staff, we all do our job. That was a fantastic day. I mean, no one will probably ever forget Berkey scoring that final try and dislocating his shoulder. I suppose that's really putting your body on the line, but I think everyone thought that we were probably gone, but it probably also set the tone for the fact that the team has a never say die attitude and can remain composed under a lot of pressure.
Yes, we're back with Macqueen's Wallabies as we bask in the glory of their triumphant march under coach Rod Macqueen. And Rod John Mackay, the manager.
Yeah,
Tell us about him.
Well, we're fortunate to have a lot of good men within our management and coaching staff, but John was terrific at his job, and he had that sort of typical eastern suburb cynicism that we know about, but he was great, good sense of humour, and just the sort of person you need for a manager.
Okay, well, before tackling New Zealand, there was the small issue of a Tri-Nations test against South Africa at Ellis Park. You lost the game by 29-15, so what positives did you take out of that match?
Well, we're certainly beaten by a better team that day, and we thought we were pretty well prepared. We'd stayed away from Johannesburg and probably isolated ourselves a little bit. And when we came in, I think we were taken by surprise a little bit. And but all in all, if we looked at the game, they played better than us, and we knew we had to sort of had a bit of work to do. And that was about what we thought. I mean, it was we couldn't say that we failed because of one little thing. It was just one of those days when they played better football than us. Such an intimidating atmosphere, but how did you approach the home clash with New Zealand, considering that you had to fly back from South Africa, virtually no training, and win the following Saturday? Well, that's where I think, again, one of the qualities of the team came to the fore. The players were very determined, and I think the next day we got out and trained over in South Africa very hard, knowing that we were going to come over and play against New Zealand, and we needed to do some heavy work early on. It was very evident right from early in the week that the players were absolutely determined to make amends.
Well, it was an amazing scene. The only change to the Wallaby side was Jason Little for the injured Dan Herbert. A crowd of over 40,000 at the SFS. And remember, the wounded All Blacks had lost all 4 of their Tri-Nations matches. So it had been a black 1998 for John Hart and his All Blacks, but you wouldn't have known the way they started.
No, they really came at us, and they've got a lot of pride, and we knew that they'd be really coming out. But again, I think the composure that the sides kept, right throughout, made a big difference. We always felt at any time we could win the game.
Well, certainly the resilience of the Wallaby team, some brilliance from Stephen Larkham, and just the cohesion and determination and the vision of the Wallaby players came to the fore.
Yeah, well, this was an interesting game because you might recall, well, there's Burke getting injured there, but at half-time we actually took him off the kicking duties, and John Eales went to kick. And I asked Burke to get a lot more involved in the game, and as you can see, he did, but probably a little bit too involved at the end.
Well, to the letter of the law, but it was victory at a price, a shoulder reconstruction for Matt Burke, but Australia's first 3-test clean sweep over the All Blacks since 1929. Rod, how far had your World Cup goal progressed?
Yeah, I felt we were really coming on. Again, the discussions we had in the dressing room were more of what we did right. They were more sort of summing up where we were than worrying too much about the victory. The victories were always celebrated very well along the way. There's no doubt about that, and we made sure we did that. But we always wanted to make sure that we put things in context and how we were playing to our own standards. Standards became probably a very overused word within the side, and they got sick of me talking about it too. But the players really took it up, and they were really starting to judge themselves on not winning and losing, but the standard of play.
Well, after winning World Cup qualifiers against Tonga, Fiji and Samoa, the Wallabies headed for Europe, edging out England at Twickenham, but not before a rousing performance against the French at the brand new Stade de France. And this tackle by Nathan Gray, that said something about standards and passion.
It certainly did. Well, you can look at those 2 centres, which were Gray and Herbert, and they're the 2 centres that we've had against the Lions this year. And that was a great example of the fitness that had been developed by the side. That was just before half-time, and that's Kefu going through a number of tackles. And so we developed quite a lot of fitness within the side and strength, and that was starting to show.
So a year out from the World Cup and more significant progress?
Yeah, definitely. We knew we had to go on from there, but some of the hard work we'd been doing with the skills and the background groundwork the players had been putting themselves through was starting to show on the field.
Well, before the Test match, you took the Wallabies to a graveyard from the French battlefields of World War I. What was the significance of that occurrence?
Well, we're actually travelling between France and Lille on our way to a game against a France A side, and Dave Pembroke, who was the liaison person, said that this brilliant veterinaire was there. So we'd been travelling for quite a while, stopped off in the bus, and went there, and it was quite an amazing place. We saw obviously cemeteries of a lot of Australian soldiers who were younger in a lot of cases than the actual players, and it was a very moving experience to see all the players coming off the bus and to start to think that these people who had represented Australia in another way actually gave their lives, and I think it puts things in perspective a lot for the players. It had in the Mayor's office that we went, it had "Never Forget Australia" written there, and what had actually happened is in the First World War, we had the Australians had the town had been captured, and three Australian battalions had come back in apparently to the town and recaptured the town, hand-to-hand fighting with bayonets and so on, and that was seen as a bit of a turning point in the war. It wasn't so long after that the war finished, and it was one of the most memorable Australian victories, and it definitely had an effect on the players. I've never seen the players so moved.
When we return, Australia and England celebrate 100 years of Test rugby, and the All Blacks chase some Wallaby stew.
I think it was just one of the most moving things that I've ever been part of, and the team, hopped off that bus. We walked up to the monument, laid a wreath, and to a man, it was a very emotional time.
Visiting the graves in France was very powerful at that point in time. It just made people reflect a little bit on what people have gone through before them. They certainly did it tough, the soldiers overseas, there's no doubt about that. And even to try to compare, you can't compare. But it was very moving for our boys at that point in time.
To go there and realise that Australia has a very rich history, and people fight for Australia for a reason, and when you represent Australia, it has a big impact on other people. And I think that was for us, for a tour at the end of the year, which can always be a bit tiring, it was a good boost. It was a special moment.
One of the big things that I found with Rod Macqueen was the planning and the meticulous planning that he went into, and he used to plan to have meetings about how to plan things. He used to love meetings, you know, and a lot of guys, you know, weren't really. They didn't really like that sort of thing. I love that sort of thing. I like to make sure that I know where I'm going and what I'm doing. He used to, you know, in July you'd know where you were going to be in November. You know, if you were in the team and that sort of stuff. And that's what I loved. John Connolly was a great coach, but with John you never knew from one day to the next exactly where you're going to be. So once you got older and you got married and you had kids, it was very important for guys to start to realise exactly what they had to do. And I've actually taken those bits and pieces of planning that Rod has instilled in the team, and I actually, you know, have used them off the field with my business sort of bits and pieces. So, you know, it's something that I'll take with me for a long time.
Macqueen's Wallabies faced their moment of truth in 1999. The 4th Rugby World Cup in Wales was the treasured prize at the end of a 2-year journey. Rod, after disposing of a tenacious Irish team in Brisbane and Perth, he then had the centenary test match, 100 years since the first game, against England at Stadium Australia. What was the significance of that game?
Yeah, well, much more significant than a lot of people realise, I think, because it only comes every 100 years, obviously. So we talked about that, and as a team we were very, very concerned and to make sure that we did well. We knew that England were really making this one a winner. They came out there and prepared for 4 weeks for this particular game. I remember sort of thinking that I might be out there one day out fishing on a wharf or something, and someone would walk up to me and say, "Aren't you the coach that lost the centenary test to England?" So it was a very important part of our process, and I think in this particular instance we really did, for the first time, talk about needing to win this game.
The old original jerseys, it was the sky blue of New South Wales for Australia, England in their original strip.
Yeah, and that means a lot to the players, meant a lot to them at the time, and you know, I think that was all part of the sort of understanding that, you know, what sort of a game we're involved in and what sort of traditions were past us.
Tim Horan at fly half, a lovely touch from him here, and also no John Eales in the forward pack.
Yeah, that's right. It was, and no Matt Burke. So it was one of those games that, you know, we were able to sort of put together a team that still performed well.
That's Cobain. Taken by
well, England, as you say, had spent 3 or 4 weeks up at Curran Cove off the Gold Coast, but Joe Roff certainly at his scintillating best in the match.
Yeah, no, it was a good result, and it was sort of, as I said, something we knew it was a very important match to us, and one, you know, probably a bit of a one-off for us to make sure that we got away with this one.
Well, England has never beaten the Wallabies on Australian soil. Rod, the Wallabies then thumped South Africa by 32-6 at Ballymore, but 1 week later, the All Blacks had gone to extravagant lengths to ambush your team over at Eden Park.
Yeah, that was certainly an experience for us. I remember driving along in the bus going to the game and just looking at everyone dressed in black streamers and the shops all decked out in black. So it was an amazing sort of situation. Then when we went into the ground, seeing what was there, we were sort of ambushed, I suppose, is the best way to put it. And they really came out. It's the hardest any team's come out against us.
Yes, well, that first 20 minutes was unbelievable. I don't think New Zealand let you touch the ball.
Well, yeah, they were just very focused. In fact, you know, it was funny because we talked about how focused we had to be at the start, but they were just all over us. The good thing from this match was the fact that we hung in there. I mean, at one stage I thought this could be 40 points onto us there. As it turned out, they only put on 1 try against us, and again, I think that was a bit of a reflection of the team, even though we probably didn't play at our best. They really played at their best, and they still weren't able to put us away properly.
Yes, well, you had Derek Bevan from the Northern Hemisphere. He's struggling a little bit with the pace of the game, I thought, but he didn't mind handing out the penalties to New Zealand. Andrew Mertens kicked 9 penalty goals, but as you say, only 1 try. And Australia came back hard, despite that scoreboard.
Yeah, I think in this game, Derek did get a little bit tired, and he tended to pull the game up a lot to try and slow it down to help him. But no, that certainly didn't have any effect on the overall result of the game.
Well, it was a badly needed win for New Zealand after the terrible events of 1998.
Yeah, it was, and it was fully deserved, and it was a good wake-up call for us to realise what they could do if we let them do it.
So Australia had the last say, but Andrew Merton's 29 points. He also kicked 9 penalty goals to equal the world record of Japan's Keiji Hirose. 34-15 is a fair old thumping after trailing by 22-3 at half-time. How did you take that loss?
I think pretty badly. We talked about a lot of things after that game. We obviously didn't feel we were as well prepared as we should have been for the onslaught that was going to come. And we knew we had more work to do. We had to get our standards higher again. We had to work on making sure that the start of our game was important. So, you know, I think that was one of the areas where we started to talk a lot more about what we're going to do in the first 5 minutes rather than being hyped up in the first 5 minutes, being more specific about what we really actually had to go out there and do.
Well, then a narrow 10-9 loss to South Africa in Cape Town followed. Alarm bells were certainly ringing, and I think after that loss it was the first time I'd heard you publicly criticise the team for their performance.
Yes, certainly the team and the tactics of which I was part of, they weren't good. I think I talked about us being technically inept, and we were on the day. We'd thought that we'd trained very well, we thought we'd prepared very well, but we just didn't put it on the field, and it wasn't good enough, and it wasn't up to what we wanted to do. So there was quite a lot of soul searching, not only amongst the players, but amongst the coaching staff and management.
So 2 losses in a row. Off to Stadium Australia, you made some critical selection changes for that big game against the All Blacks.
Yeah, there's a couple of different selections there. I think Joe Roff was dropped for the first time in his career, and Joe is someone I've always worked with, so that was a very hard decision. And Rod Macqueen came into the side at fly half, which pushed Timmy Horan into the inside centre position.
Well, the selectors got it right. It was a great performance by the Wallaby team. Let's go to the action at Stadium Australia, and it was a world record crowd.
Andrew Merton starts proceedings and goes deep. Kiefer gets an early touch. Pumps it downfield to Jeff Wilson and Tane Randall. 10 from halfway. He kicks across field now. Matthew Burke comfortably inside his quarter. Chance to ram this downfield. He does. That's huge. So a good start for the Wallabies in the early kicking duel. They're very focused tonight, this Aussie front row. They are trying to put it on New Zealand. And here's an overlap for Mertens. George Gregan across. Mertens all the way. Oh, that's a soft try in the end. Australia badly exposed on the short side. 37 metres out from the Aussie goal line. Out wide it goes to Cullen. He's through, fullback to beat, Umanga's inside! Horan saves the day in the last line. Cobain got it. Big drive for the Wallaby, 8. 4 metres to go, 3 to go. 2 to go, they're over! What a sensational surge there from the Wallaby forwards. Gets over the advantage line. Gregan again. Connors. Well caught by Randall. Connors looking strong tonight. Gregan again to Kiefer. He's going to punish in behind them once more. Australian scrum holding up extremely well. Here's Kiefer again. He grubbers in behind. It's nasty. And a mark paid there to Jeff Wilson. He got the fly kick that came through and he plays on. So cool in the crisis. But that was a tantalising little kick through in behind the defence that time. The crowd is up on the board. There it is. It's a world record attendance. Over 107,000 fans. A sweet moment, Chris, for Rod Macqueen. I haven't seen him smile like that for a long time.
Look at that smile of blessed relief.
And Timmy Horan, the great veteran who made his debut in '89 with Phil Kearns against the All Blacks, gives his coach a congratulatory handshake as well. As soon as play stops here, The referee will blow it for full time.
Couple of souvenirs there for Jason Little, but that's it.
A record-breaking win for the Wallabies. The replaced players stream onto the field. The crowd rises as one. They are ecstatic.
Yes, Rod, amazing scenes there. And Rod Kafer had come in at fly half. You'd had Tim Horan there for the previous 3 or 4 test matches. That seemed to be a critical move.
It was in that game. In fact, I thought Kafer contributed great tactically, not only on the field but off the field. And he had a very good game as well. So it was one of the great victories.
Rod, the world record crowd, John Williamson singing Waltzing Matilda, and that sea of gold in the support, altogether it was an amazing experience.
It all came together that day. It was wonderful to hear Australians being demonstrative and actually singing. It was terrific.
What was the background to that sort of scenario with John Williamson and that patriotic support?
Well, John Williamson actually contacted Australian Rugby not so long after one of the earlier test matches, and we talked about how we could get things going. And he's a great rugby supporter, and we talked about at the stadium working something out that we could get the supporters singing Waltzing Matilda and how he could contribute. And it just all seemed to come together that day, and remembering the gold in the crowd, singing Waltzing Matilda, etc. But I think a lot of that actually went on to the Olympics when we sort of saw some of the way the patriotism worked, and I think John Williamson also went on to the Olympics and sort of got that going again. So it was very nice sort of memories from my point of view.
Well, 6 weeks out from the opening World Cup game, was everything in place for you?
That was certainly, it was a good match to have, knowing that we were now going on to the World Cup. Our destiny was the next thing we were going to be talking about. We'd completed our journey, and our destiny was about to begin, and it wasn't a bad way to start that.
So the stage was ready and waiting for the pursuit of rugby's holy grail, the Webb Ellis Cup, the ultimate prize, on November 6 at the Millennium Stadium.
We go back to the 99 World Cup. Before we started, we actually landed in at Ireland, and the first day there, again, innovation. He said the first day we turned up that they organised a game of golf and actually a few beers by the Guinness rep, and who were the sponsors of the tournament, and to try and keep everybody awake and get our body clocks, going in the right way. What happened after that was we played golf. Finished golf about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The Guinness has gone on, and the boys have actually kicked on a little bit hard because we all knew we had the next day off as well, so we could get over a bit of a hangover if we had one. Anyway, there was a few boys that played harder than others, and Rod had made a comment during that afternoon with a couple of beers that it's hard for him to sort of get away from that mateship that he had with the Brumbies. And then in the wee hours of the morning, Joe Roff, who happened to be a little bit more under the weather than a few others, was seen in his underpants running up and down outside Rod Macqueen's room saying, "It's okay, Rod, I'll be friends with you." So, you've always got to be careful because the boys will have a go at you.
Well, Rod, you dropped Joe Roff for that New Zealand match. He was obviously trying to state his case.
I put him back in after that. I don't know why.
Well, thanks for joining us for this 7 Sports special, Macqueen's Wallabies. Rod, the World Cup Wallabies arrived in Dublin, and as Dan Crowley has told us, they're a radical training session, but it seemed to be a bit of a springboard for the whole campaign.
Yeah, as it turned out, it worked very well. We talked to the medical staff about the best way we could do it, and we thought we'd just have 2 days off, just relax first up. And as Dan Crowley pointed out, it became a little bit more than that. We had a good drinking session, and it was amazing to see. I think the camaraderie was really built up there, and the journalists couldn't believe it. This professional team coming out who was supposed to be well trained and well looked after, we're just having a party for the first 2 days. But the great thing about the team was the ability to switch on and off. I must admit that I was worried a number of times because of the way they were, the larrikinism within the side. But the biggest issue was they were able to switch on and off at will, and that was great. Sometimes it was a bit hard to get them to switch back on, but generally they were able to do it.
Well, Ireland was a perfect setting for you, but what was the battle strategy for the World Cup?
I think to build into it, we talked about making sure that we came easy. You can't have that sort of intensity all the time. So we were building as we went, mainly planning for the final, obviously, when we thought we were going to be playing New Zealand.
So recapping the pool matches and also the quarter-final win over Wales. Australia downed Romania, Ireland, a great win over USA at Munster, and then downing Wales by 24-9 at Millennium Stadium. Now, was there a poignant moment in that match against Wales?
Yeah, I suppose the thing I remember most was before we were going out there at a press conference, Quinnell was talking about the passion of the Welsh. And I found that a little bit annoying, because passion is not something that you can just automatically switch on and talk about. Passion is something that has to be built for a long time. I think what he was talking about, they were going to try and sort of overcome us by out-muscling us. But the passion we had is something that had been built up within that side for quite a while. And I think the moment came when late in the game, where we were going to go over to Twickenham, whoever won that game. Quinnell got Eels, and they'd have a bit of a tussle, and Quinnell said, "Where do you think you're going?" And Eels looked him in the eyes and said, "To Twickenham, son, to Twickenham." And I thought that was just a nice sort of moment to talk about, you know, the passion that and the confidence that had built up in the side.
Well, and so too that semi-final against South Africa at Twickenham. Johnny Eels was spot on. So, Rod, this was an epic. It was a double header with France to play New Zealand next day at Twickenham. And Dan Herbert getting a breakout here, but the full might of the Springboks in this game.
Yeah, there's no doubt it was a very tough game for us. We trained meticulously coming into it. We talked about the possibilities, actually, if it was a draw at full time, how we would go about it. And I think that helped a lot, because we were fairly relaxed coming in and out of the dressing room. So, you know, generally we did feel in control. The biggest issue in that match was what we see here, some of the deliberate fouls and so on. Every time we got down in their quarter, we were fouled out of the game, and we'd go for a goal. So it wasn't just the defence.
Well, it was dramatic as the game went to extra time. And I want to know how long you spent on Stephen Larkin for this drop goal.
Yeah, well, the extraordinary kicking ability that I've got, I was able to work with him for a couple of weeks on working. Everyone who knows me understands that I've got absolutely no ball coordination whatsoever. But no, it was something that was mentioned as we went out of the dressing room for the final, the extra time, by Tim Lane, to say if you got an opportunity, have a crack at it, and that's exactly what happened.
Rod, the World
Hasn't
Cup...
got one since, by the way.
The World Cup wasn't the spectacle that we'd all hoped. The IRB had stepped in, they'd banned the sin bin, and they'd also turned the focus for the referees on the attacking team, for better or for worse.
Yeah, well, it was. I touched on that a little bit before, but that was something obviously that we'd picked up, and something as simple as just making sure that they were concentrating on the attacking team at the breakdown meant that we couldn't run the ball from our own line, because if we were doing that and we'd go through a series of breakdowns, the chances were we'd get a penalty against us. And our stats showed us that the teams that were moving the ball in their own half were losing games through penalties. So we actually had to make sure we played the game down there. We didn't kick the ball out, but we constantly would kick the ball down the field and use our defence to keep teams down there until we had the opportunity to kick a goal.
Now, your opponents in that semi-final, surprisingly, from the semi-final in the final, were going to be France. Now, what about their effort against New Zealand at Twickenham on the Sunday?
Yeah, well, you know, I actually felt the result of that would have been different had we been playing under the sin bin law, because they infringed all through the first half against the All Blacks, and they just became frustrated in the end. They totally lost their composure, and that's where France got away.
Well, they certainly got away, and you know, mistakes, I suppose, by New Zealand, and this was a heartbreak for the New Zealand nation. But this French team in the second half, absolutely unstoppable.
Yeah, actually, we were sitting back in the hotel room watching this, and you know, obviously cheering when these tries were going on, and it was an amazing game. But and you know, obviously the end result was something we just didn't expect.
So you were caught with your pants down.
Well, we were, you know, with all the training and the meticulous planning that we talk about. I must admit that we had absolutely planned to be playing the All Blacks in the final, and so all our training, a lot of the moves that we'd been working on, had all been to be there for the All Blacks. So the person who had least sleep that night was the video analyst, who unfortunately had to stay up and regroup and get as much footage as we could on France, and we talked about that the next day.
Okay, to the final step, the last step of the journey to the summit. Please set the scene for us.
Well, it was an amazing week, I suppose, coming in there. We had support from all over Australia, and the walls were just filled with some of the faxes and emails and so on that had come through. we were focusing a lot on the team itself, our team. We decided that we're going to play this game the way we wanted to impose ourselves on France, which probably wasn't the way we always played against the other sides. We'd change our game plan a lot. And we called on a lot of things within the team. And one of the special things, obviously, was Villiers Bretonnier that we'd talked about. And we brought a lot of that back into it. It was a machine gun post not far out of there, and some of the words that the leader of that battalion had spoken about were brought into the pre-match. We also had a wonderful message from Major General Cosgrove from East Timor at the time, talking about how they were watching the Wallabies and how they were inspired about what they were going to go out there and do. That email was read by John Mackay just before the match, and we talked about the feelings that from within the team, Villiers Bretonnier, and the message that this leader had talked to with his players about going out there and defending at all costs. So all of those things were, I suppose, just to bring back some of the emotions and past of the team.
November 6, 1999, in Cardiff, 72,500 fans and the Wallabies swimming in their catch cry, "Our destiny is in our own hands."
Excellent reaction there from the Australian hooker. Kick was charged down by La Maison. Cobain, Herberts, Horan's with him. Here's Jarrah. Benatsal, fine tackle. Wallabies one quick ball. The French dive in, interfere on the ground. Another penalty, Australia.
Cobain not noted for big hands, but they were fantastic hands. Gave the Australians a chance to get this opportunity for penalty, but as the scruffing goes on.
A sea of Wallaby jerseys on hand. Galtier now. Look at the numbers for France here. June was waiting for the kick.
Watson's called it a knock forward from the tap back.
La Maison. Torai Kefu. Big charge from Kefu. Taken by Palouse. Now Giffen. David Giffen. Striding out well. Setting it up beautifully here. Here's June. 35 out. Again, a fence there from France. The referee plays advantage. Burke strikes it well. 12 plays 6. Wallaby team now attack from the quarter. Larkham and Kefu again. He's taken 3 with him. Gregan quickly, short side. Here's Burke. This is Horan. Burke's inside. Australia 10 metres to go. Advantage. Larkham again. Stephen Larkham. 5 to go. Referee plays advantage. Here's Matthew. It's Dan Herbert coming into first receiver. Offside. Composure's there. Larkham. Roth. Joe Roth. Sensational. Lost it. But he lost it. That's Matthew Burke. Australia looking ominous here. They're all out on the right. Gregan. Horan. Finnegan. June. Jeremy Paul on there. The youngster gets his opportunity, and Eels with that athletic skill. Here's Finnegan. Owen Finnegan. Keep going. He's there. That is the clincher. Look at the Wallaby flags. Australia gets the second try through big Owen Finnegan. And the World Cup is theirs.
Oh, fantastic line-up. Jump again from Eels. And watch it. The Brumby special. Gregan, the flick back in. The rampaging Owen Finnegan. He's got all the cousins across from Ireland. Just bulldozes his way across. Rod Macqueen looking very relaxed.
The crowd is singing Waltzing Matilda as Entomac makes a scorching break. 25 metres out. Benazi's pass into touch. That is full time. Australia salutes John Eales Wallabies. They've pulled off the Webb Ellis Cup. The Australian players simply can't believe it. Ecstasy here in Cardiff. Final score of 35-12.
So, Rod, the motto about destiny, the team addressed that and embraced it.
Yeah, actually, we took a 40-foot banner everywhere we went with us at the World Cup, reading "Our destiny is in our hands," and we hung it in every room we went to.
Melon Finnegan, what a try.
Yeah, no, he certainly did well when he came on. He'd only been on for about 1 minute then, I think.
And that John Williamson song about the golden wallaby, but the practice of a classic wallaby, addressing the team, it's been mentioned. It was Chris Handy in this instance. What effect did he have?
Chris did a great job, and he talked about the pride and how proud he was to present it, which was something that the classics always did. It was interesting to see how important it was for them to have the honour of doing that, as well as it was reciprocal from the players to be able to have, one of the players from the greats. Some of the best moments that I've remembered in the last 4 years have been sitting next to the classic wallaby in the bus on the way to the game and having them recount what it was like in their time compared to now. And a lot hadn't changed. It was interesting.
So the marvellous World Cup triumph, but some R&R badly needed for not only you and the Wallaby team, but goals had to be set then for 2000. What were they?
Yeah, well, we talked about what we'd done in the last World Cup in 91, and I think when we came into the 95 era, we talked about mission repeat, and we didn't want to get into that situation, do what you've done in the past. So we took a little bit from a poem that Rupert McCall had talked about, and it finished off something like the best is yet to come. So the best is yet to come was our catch cry, I guess, for the following year, and we set ourselves a goal to win the Tri-Nations, which was the first short-term goal we'd talked about in 2 years.
He introduced to having a classic wallaby address the team before test matches, and again, that's a very powerful tool. The number of grown men that I've seen cry during that process, the number that could hardly, keep their eyes dry at all before you run onto a game, it's just very powerful.
It was very emotional, it was highly nationalistic, and it was one of the great experiences of life.
The World Cup final where Chris Handy came and spoke to us, and Buddha's a guy that gets passionate when he talks about a rolling maul or a pushover try. You can imagine what it's like when he's talking to you as you're about to head out to the ground to play in a World Cup final. The passion that Buddha had in his voice. At one stage I looked across the room and there wasn't a dry eye in the place.
Most outstanding moment, definitely 99 World Cup final, Chris Buddha Handy. He presented John with a 1990 bottle of Grange, and he said, we're going to have this in the dressing room after the win, which we did. And I remember Scotty Staniforth couldn't find any red wine glasses, so he found some polystyrene cups. And I remember sitting in the baths at Cardiff, having some 1990 Grange out of a polystyrene cup. So very memorable.
I think the team manager, John Mackay, is an extremely important linchpin just in the moulding of the team. So many personalities, there's obviously going to be difficulties, and John does a very good job of keeping it all together.
It's been incredibly enlightening to see, how a manager can juggle 26, 36 players, 10 staff, and still come out at the end of it quite sane and with a good sense of humour.
The most integral member of the team, and probably the most unsung hero, would be John Mackay, the team manager. And I think that, for a guy to have been there, he was there prior to Rod in the Greg Smith era, and he just does a magnificent job without any fuss.
He does so much work as well that never gets seen, he'll never get thanked for, but if John Mackay is in charge of something and it needs to be done, it'll be done.
You just can't hold a good Eastern Suburbs man down. But back in 1999, the Wallabies became the first nation to win 2 World Cups, but there was unfinished business for coach Rod Macqueen, namely the Tri-Nations title. Now, New Zealand had won it 3 times, South Africa once, but Rod, twin home victories over Argentina really got the ball rolling for you. But the Tri-Nations, if you won Tri-Nations, it also would have meant that you won Bledisloe Cup as well.
Yeah, obviously that was the turnout from it. From our point of view, again, it was very important to have a short-term goal for a change. It was really nice just to concentrate and know that was our goal. The Argentinian matches, we probably went in a little overdone. We'd sort of been, we'd trained right through to the Friday in a lot of cases, and they were loading weeks, as we call it. So we'd got a good foundation under our belt there going into the series.
OK, let's go to the Nelson Mandela Challenge against the Springboks. It was staged in Melbourne at the brand new Colonial Stadium under a closed roof.
Yeah, well, the closed roof is interesting because, as we know, the Northern Hemisphere talk about we should be able to have their roof open. But I think it makes it very fair. You can go into the game knowing that both sides are going to have exactly the same situation. We found a great ground to play in.
Well, certainly Sterling Mortlock was a guy who came through for you in 2000. We saw Matthew Burke time and again drive play off rucks and mauls, but just the multi-skilling of some of these guys, amazing, and Mortlock was a classic example.
Yeah, he was very good. As you mentioned, Burke, he was very good at pick and drive, and a lot of these players, really worked very hard. There's, you can see Herbie getting in there and cleaning out. Game's changed a lot, obviously, in 4 years.
Sterling Mortlock? Well, the Aussie rules fans would have enjoyed that.
Yeah, well, I think he's, he ended up Rookie of the Year, and he's a great player. We certainly missed him this year.
And I think you picked out one of the smallest opponents there for Mortlock to jump over to. Was that just coincidence?
No, he's a good player. One of the issues which is becoming more and more is ball in the air, and that's one thing that obviously Sterling's very good at.
Well, Rod, a change of coach for the All Blacks, John Hart out, and his place taken by a successful Super 12 coach from the Canterbury Crusaders, Wayne Smith. Now, 110,000 people at Stadium Australia, a world record attendance. Did you have to prepare differently for Wayne Smith and the All Blacks?
Probably a little bit differently. He brought a lot of the skills that came from Canterbury. I think they're a bit innovative, a bit like the Brumbies were. And he brought a lot of, I guess, new ideas, new thinking with him, and we knew that'd be the case. And it was probably not as easy to prepare for this particular game as it was for some of the past games with the All Blacks.
Well, it was billed as the greatest game of rugby ever played. Afterwards, one newspaper even headlined the game as a test match made in heaven.
Running sideways there. And again, Merton's forced to kick it. Was partly charged down. The bounce for Alatini. Umaga! That's a gift 5-pointer for New Zealand. Chris Latham has made a mistake there. Umaga cleared from scrum half. They're into space here. Lomu! Here they go again. Only Latham to beat. Gregan's across. He easily beat Latham. And another try coming up here for New Zealand. Alatini! Sensational! 2 tries in 3 minutes. What a start to Bledisloe 2000 and the Tri-Nations. They're finding some great gaps. Alatini again. And a 3rd try to Cullen. It's raining tries here. It's a demolition at Stadium Australia. Here's Jason Little having a go. Here's Gregan. Stephen Larkham. He has Mortlock for a try. He's away. That's a great riposte from the Wallabies. John Eales. Gregan. Little gap here for Williams. Big Jim Williams. Can he get there? Wallabies driving. 1 metre short. Gregan now. Here it is. Mortlock. He gets his second. 5 to go for Australia. Gregan to Larkham. Herbert almost through the gap. Gregan again. Latham. He's there. 3rd try for Australia. Delayed pass to Roth. There it is for Herbert, just short. Gregan has his hands on it. He was tackled offside. Roth gets over. Great advantage by the referee. And the Wallabies incredibly draw level. Mertens goes high. Oh, some great work there by the All Blacks. His grip. Marshall. He's there. New Zealand have got it. Justin Marshall hit it at pace. Some very flimsy Wallaby defence. Latham's out on the left, calling for the ball on the wing. Roth. Tore Kepu. 8 minutes to go. Australia now. Kafer. Paul. There it is. 2.5 minutes to go. Australia by 1 point. Alatini. Iramia. Sandwiched in midfield. Kelleher. Randall and Lomu. Can he do it? Larkham. Lomu has won the game surely for New Zealand. This has been a magnificent comeback by the All Blacks after all look lost. And it's that man, Jonah Lomu, the human juggernaut. So this really was a superb pass by Taine Randall. He committed 2 Australian defenders and somehow managed to get the ball clear.
Yes, what a match, Rod. What did you say to the Wallabies? What message went out when you were down 24-0 after 8 minutes?
I think probably about 16 times, get your hands on the ball, because we hadn't touched the ball, and that's all we were saying. We must get hold of the ball. But it was an amazing. It was an amazing match. It was probably the most memorable match I've ever seen.
So a Tri-Nation setback at home for the Wallabies. Only 2 away wins now against the All Blacks and Springboks would lift the trophy for the first time.
It was a great innovation that Rod brought into the side. You know, to be based in one spot, to be able to unpack your bags, to have your family around you, just brought some normality back into your life.
I think it was a huge innovation at the time, and looked upon like, oh crikey, what are we getting ourselves into? But I think that was one of the things that again that gelled the Wallabies and has been another ingredient as to why they've been so successful.
I think with a group dynamic as big as we have, the fact that the players can bring their wives in and their kids in, and staff like myself can get to know the players' wives and be part of a wider family situation, I think that's been essential.
The concept of Camp Wallaby, to get all the best facilities and get the players to those facilities, and then add the family in there to give you the balance, was a fantastic initiative, and certainly integral in terms of the team's success.
The Wallaby unit has been a very tight unit between the players and the management as well. And the team wouldn't have been as successful without the input of the management staff. And that goes right from Rod and Rod's enormous impact that he has had on the team. But he has been able to have that enormous impact through the support staff that he's had, right from people like Jeff Miller and Tim Lane, through to the current assistant coaches, guys like Ewan McKenzie and Glenn Eller, through the guys like John Mackay. You go through the Anthony Wakelings, the Mudges, as he's better known, with the video and the stats, the media unit, everyone within the team. It's just combined so well to help the team get out on the paddock and have their main worry and their main focus being actually playing rugby. To be able to get into that situation has been a great help for the team.
Yes, and you look at the medical staff, Dr. Michael Jamieson, Greg Craig, does that man ever sleep? But really, Rod Macqueen's Wallabies are aiming to win the Tri-Nations for the first time as we relive their campaign. Rod, as holders of the Bledisloe Cup, was the trophy your main focus for that Battle of Wellington in a brand new stadium, Westpac Trust?
We obviously had to win that game, because if we didn't win it, we wouldn't have got the Tri-Nation. So it became a very important game for us. We actually changed our focus a little bit on it, and we came in with a last-minute tactic, which was to get Williams involved in the side, which meant we had to take Cobain out, who was one of our line-out jumpers.
Yes, well, let's go to the highlights of this game now, because it was a great effort by the Wallaby team. You'd made this tactical change in the back row, and it was a game where they really had to dig deep.
Yeah, certainly, there's no doubt about that. It was, as we all know, a very, very tight game, but a very important game for us.
So, Rod, the new Westpac Trust Stadium in Wellington, a far cry from the primitive, windswept athletic park just over the hill. The Bledisloe Cup was at stake, and so too were Australia's hopes of staying in the Tri-Nations race.
Australia scrum solid. Beautiful break by Herberts. Mortlock! Mortlock! He's there! Sterling Mortlock has given Australia a fantastic start here. He had to do it from 30 metres out, but what a break by Dan Herbert. But it's all been New Zealand's territory so far. Eales has pinched it at the front. Now Larkham. Herbert wants it. Straight into Mertens. Sent him backwards. Richard Harry. Jim Williams and Gregan. Williams sets it up. Here's Larkham. Jason Little. Almost to the quarter. Eales arrives. Good protection by the Aussies. Tole Kefu. That's Latham, his Queensland teammate. New Zealand in trouble here. Larkham. There it is, another one for Roth. Australia up 12-0. They missed 2 shots at goal. That last one very difficult. Alatini. Umaga! Tana Umaga just couldn't offload to Iramia. The All Blacks hit back here. Marshall works at short side. Lomu's there. It takes 3 to bring him down. This is New Zealand's chance. They're lining up on the open side. Umaga now. Australia has 2 on 2. Here goes Cullen. Thank you. New Zealand. That's Ron Cribb at the back. Alatini, Jeremia. Here's Lomu and Umaga. Clever variation. Cullen again. Number 2. What a superb try. We all said it would go down to the wire. It's done just that. Australia have pinched it. Gregan. This is Australia's chance. A last-ditch chance now for Herbert. New Zealand can't afford a penalty. Williams. Time is definitely up on the clock. Joe Roth. They're up to the 22.
Where was Craig down? He could not be.
Oh, there's the penalty. Mortlock has a chance to win the Bledisloe Cup for Australia. Unbelievable! John Eales has done it. The Wallabies have the Bledisloe Cup in dramatic circumstances. It's been snatched from the jaws of defeat.
The miracle man, John Eales. Amazing goal kick. Mortlock was off the field injured. I think Eales was even surprised, but how emotional for you?
Oh, it was probably the most emotional I've been. It was a great ending, and the way that Eales went about kicking the goal was fantastic.
Stephen Larkham.
Yeah, well, Stephen he's just gone from strength to strength. He's certainly, you miss him when he's not in the side, there's no doubt about that.
So importantly, the Bledisloe Cup was retained, but the Tri-Nations was still alive. So last stop, Durban, and another date with destiny. Rod, you stayed well out of the city at a 5-star golf resort. Let me just remind you of what you got up to, how you dressed up before the Test match. Take us through this 17th hole.
It's a new technique I've been working on. I wasn't doing too well, but I thought maybe this new swing might work for me, and the follow through and the after bit wasn't the best thing I've worked on. But the players got a lot of fun out of it, and my mates back home have never let me live it down, unfortunately.
Well, amazingly, after 4 years of coaching at Super 12 and Test level, Rod Macqueen had never coached his side to victory in South Africa. It was time to break the ice.
So there's David Giffen with a superb leap. Gregan now, it's intercepted by Erasmus, and there's a try coming up. Did he get it down? He's called for the video ref. Looks as though the advantage is over. Bad pass there, no knock on. Somehow Larkham managed to pick it up, but look at the defence from Cornet Cricker. Gregan then working the short side. Here's the gap, Herbert. Jim Williams in support. He's first there. Richard Harry now. Chance for Harry. He got it to Jeremy Paul. There's a lovely pass to Latham. Let's wait for the video ref. And a vital period for both sides now. Larkham. Can the Aussie backline turn it Australia's way? Gregan. Quick ball there. Fletcher Dyson desperately trying to accelerate. Gregan again for Larkham. Flick pass to Jason Little. 5 metres to go. George Gregan working the angles. Jeremy Paul there! He lost it. He lost it over the goal line. John Eales comes in and has pitched the ball. Stephen Larkham. Somehow he got that ball. Panaho goes in. Or is it Jeremy Paul? They're ready to lift Eales. He's got the distance. He's got the distance. Oh, what a kick. The Boks have hit the leads. Hands off, Green. Last-ditch assault by the Wallabies. Not much on for Larkham. Roll away, he rolls along the ground. Gregan again. 3 on 3. Here's Jason Little. Driven back in the tackle. Delport's there. Gregan in again. Australia still holding onto the ball. Hand in the ruck.
Well, who do you give this kick to? Johnny Hill, Sterling Mortlock on the field.
So it's all with Sterling Mortlock.
Think of Benny Perkins, Sterling Mortlock, slow it down and bang it between.
The Tri-Nations rests with his right kicking boot. Has he kicked it well? Oh! Sterling Mortlock from touch has put Australia in the leads.
Yes, sweet irony there with Mortlock kicking that goal after missing being off the field for Eales's winning kick in Wellington.
Yeah, well, Ealesy had the courage of his convictions then. He said that had Mortlock been on, he would have let him take the kick the week before, and he had a lot of confidence in him, and he did exactly that.
Yes, well, Sterling Mortlock, the hero. Phil Harry, the outgoing president of Australian Rugby, with that familiar gold scarf. And whose birthday was it?
I can't remember it this time, but I know it was some pretty wild celebrations after that one.
Yes, a good time was had by all, I must say, Rod, the celebrations.
Yeah, it was terrific. I think one of the good things about it was that we were isolated back out at the golf resort, and everyone got together. I think there was chairmen and CEOs and broadcasters probably all getting in there and enjoying themselves.
And a few flamingos as well.
Yes, it's become a bit of a mystery, the flamingo, the great flamingo mystery of the Australian Wallabies, but we'll try and keep that under our hat, mate.
To come back from 1-0 down to win the next 2 tests against the odds, you know, we copped a battering. I suppose we had a bit of self-doubt about ourselves and not only our coaching and playing ability, but to come back with the way that we did, with the hard work that we had to put in to achieve those results was fantastic. And to be the first Australian team to beat the Lions in a series and being part of the coaching staff was, one of the highlights of my career.
Yes, what a series we witnessed between the Wallabies and the Lions in 2001. More than 3 million television viewers watched the deciding third test on the 7 network here in Australia. But Rod, things didn't go according to plan in the first test at the Gabba.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't as we'd planned. We knew it were going to be a little bit underdone, but we certainly weren't ready for the onslaught that hit us.
But towards the end of the game, particularly in the second half, you started to get a bit of that continuity that was missing early in the game.
We did find that once we started to get a few phases together, that we started to really make some inroads, and they struggled a little bit when that happened.
So Australia down by 29-8. Elton Flatley also coming on and starting to really get the outside backs moving nicely.
This part of the game was the area that we sort of really looked at afterwards. I mean, we knew that we hadn't played very well, obviously, but that part gave us a bit of hope about what was to be ahead.
Well, the Lions came out roaring in the second test at Colonial Stadium in Melbourne, again dominating the first half. Now, I just wonder, how concerned were you at half-time?
Yeah, interesting enough, we weren't too concerned because we actually felt that once we were getting a few phases together, we were really making inroads. And I think the penalty count was about 8-1 at that stage. So we figured if we didn't give away penalties that things were looking pretty good. And that's basically the way it went. We talked about it again at half-time, that the opportunities would come, and luckily they did pretty early in the second half.
Yes, what an opportunity. Joe Roth's intercept. He had a lot of work to do here.
Yeah, no, he certainly did, and that's where he's really good. When he gets those opportunities, he very rarely fails.
The Australian scrum really put it on the Lions, particularly in the first half. George Smith really came into his own in this game.
Yeah, there's a lot of significant things. The scrum, no doubt, had a huge thing to do with it. We'd had Blades had come and helped us for the weeks leading up to it, and we saw a lot of that happen. And obviously, it was good to see Axel Foley sort of back in the frame, doing what he does best, and that's getting those set plays organised.
Well, it was vintage Joe Roth there, as we saw. It was all then down to Stadium Australia to decide the fate of the Tom Richards Cup. What was the key to this epic victory, a famous victory by Australia?
Well, the biggest thing was that the discovery as we went through, that we felt that they were vulnerable after 2 or 3 phases. If they didn't score after 2 or 3, they didn't have a lot of options. They'd either kick the ball or they'd make mistakes. From our point of view, alternatively, if we could get more than 3 or 4 phases going, we felt the team was really working well together. So I guess our main effort was to make sure that we got that continuity going, and we tried very hard to stop them slowing the ball down, which was what they'd been trying to do right through the series.
And a sensational test debut by Justin Harrison. Didn't he pull off some steals in this game?
Yeah, Googie had a great game, and you know, he's going to be a great player. The future of Australia's in pretty good hands when you see youngsters like him.
So good in the air, an area that you've placed great emphasis and a big improvement as the series progressed.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, ball in the air now has become so important. Restarts, scrums and lineouts have always been important, but now those kickoffs have become extra important for us, and that was obviously just a great take by Justin there.
Well, the Lions probably would have scored from there if they'd got their driving more going. It was the steal of the century, I suppose.
Yeah, it was. He's been doing that all year with the Brumbies, and you know, he's a pretty special player, and as I say, someone who's got a great future.
And then again, incredible scenes at Stadium Australia.
Yeah, no, it was really good, very emotional again, and it was good to see, you know, to be able to go out something like that. I mean, if you could sort of have an ideal scenario, that was it. I remember young Harrison, the first day I was with the Brumbies, he came into the camp, so to sort of go out knowing he played his first test was also pretty special for me.
And Justin Harrison seemed to get into the forefront of every photograph and every TV shot that was taken.
Well, I'm sure the boys will remind him about that one. But no, he's you know, he's out of the squad now, which I think is reasonable under the circumstances. But as I say, players like Smith, like Harrison, we're starting to see those young players come up. There's a good future for Australian rugby.
So, Rod, where to now for the Wallabies under Eddie Jones?
I really think that they can take another step up. I think they can play at another level. I think Eddie's already indicated that he feels that, and I don't see any reason why they can't. I think that they can definitely play better than what we have, and the depth is looking pretty good.
And where to now for Rod Macqueen? Is it back to the mundane activity as chairman of Advantage Line?
Well, that's not too mundane. We've got some good things happening there, but I'm looking forward to getting back into business and, of course, spending more time with the family.
Still some involvement, though, in rugby?
Yes, I'll be consulting to the Australian Rugby Union, and you know, so I've got an ongoing relationship there, which I'm really looking forward to.
And trophies aside, they're all here. What has been the most satisfying aspect of your reign as Wallaby coach?
That's a difficult one, Gordon. I think seeing the achievements that we work so hard to achieve together, seeing those come off, and obviously the friends that we've met over that period of time, and being able to share all that with my wife, Liz.
Well, Rod, on behalf of everyone, enjoy your semi-retirement, and you know, we thank you for your monumental contribution. I think Australian and world rugby has been blessed.
Thanks, Gordon, and thanks, Channel 7. It's been great.
And thank you for being on this special journey with 7 Sport, the spirit of rugby.